Let's get into this college football stuff with Connor O'Gara from Saturday Down South. Happy New Year, Connor. How was your New Year's before we get into football?
You know, I'm just I got to say right off the top, I've seen that O.J. Simpson commercial, and, you know, I think he gets maybe half as high as Najee did on that play. So, I mean, I'm just saying, go back, put them side by side. One does not compare to the other.
Well, and hopefully Najee Harris is a nicer person anyway. That was an incredible play. Alabama showed out, although I know Nick Saban isn't necessarily fully happy with everything from the performance, but, you know, they end up, you know, still covering and now facing a team that I don't think they expected to face in the championship game. So what thoughts did you have watching the playoff? First of all, starting with Ohio State's massive upset.
You know, I did not see that coming. I said throughout the week that if Ohio State was going to win, like the only thing in the back of my mind saying, oh, maybe there's a chance, or what are we going to be talking about on Monday if Ohio State wins this game? It would be a superhuman performance from Justin Fields where he finally fed up being the number 2 to Trevor Lawrence's number 1. That's exactly what it looked like unfolded on Friday. I mean, don't get me wrong. I thought Clemson was in really good shape to be able to stretch the field against an Ohio State defense that has struggled against the downfield passing attack. But what we saw was one of the great individual efforts that the sport has ever seen on a postseason stage. I firmly believe that when you consider what Justin Fields was playing through with the rib injury, I don't think any of us can really put ourselves in that position, knowing what was at stake, knowing that had potential to be the last college game of his career, and he would potentially end up not getting to a national championship if he didn't find a way to grit his teeth and do exactly what he did. And it wasn't just, they get by with a close win. They dominated. I mean, that was so one-sided. I was blown away. That was like everything in the tank type of game for Ohio State. Maybe that's the thing that's working in Alabama's favor with this national championship, is if Ohio State left it all out there, which kind of looks like they did, then obviously that bodes well for an Alabama team that played well against Notre Dame but has been able to avoid these major catastrophic injuries. Who knows if they could potentially get Jalen Waddle back as well. I understand that the Lance Dickerson injury was huge, but I thought it was a very interesting weekend. Definitely more so from Ohio State than it was Alabama, who pretty much did what we expected.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a ho-hum quality to their win over Notre Dame, with the exception of the Harris hurdle and just Devontae Smith, to me, cementing his status as the best player in college football 2020. I don't know if he's going to win the Heisman, because I know the votes came in before the bowls, but he's the best player in the country, and you can't change my mind.
He will win a Heisman Trophy. That I believe. I firmly believe that, and not just because of what he did in the playoff when the votes were already tallied, but I think there's growing momentum, and if you kind of study some of the gambling lines, it's very much trending in that direction, and you see what he's capable of doing. Imagine being a Heisman voter and watching that game and telling yourself, yeah, I made the right decision. No, like there's just no way. I mean, we're talking about someone who, you know, is doing stuff that we've never seen at the wide receiver position. And it's not just some of the physical stuff that we see, but, you know, he's one of 2 Power 5 receivers in conference ever to, in their first 11 games, have at least 95 catches, 1,500 yards and 17 touchdown catches. Michael Crabtree being the other one. He played in an offense where they threw the ball 58 times a game in Mike Leach's offense. A little bit different than Alabama, who averages 32 passing attempts per game. What Devontae Smith has done this year has just been remarkable. I mean, you have SEC coaches who are saying he's the best receiver I've ever seen. And I believe them. I mean, I don't think that there are enough words to describe what he's done. And I agree with you 100% that if he's not the Heisman Trophy, there's something wrong.
Connor O'Gara from Saturday Down South joining us here on Halftime. Connor, we got a text coming in here from Greg in Fort Smith. Going back to that Clemson-Ohio State game win, and I'm blanking on the kid's name, but the senior linebacker that got ejected for targeting. Lots of conversation been said about like what needs to happen with targeting, the targeting rule or anything like that. And Greg he seems to believe that it was a good tackle to him. He did lower his helmet, but Connor, moving forward, we've seen it mess Arkansas up with Jalen Catalon. We've seen it again during Clemson, Ohio State. In your opinion, what needs to change with this targeting rule to try to obviously keep the players safe because that's at the priority number one. But B, losing some of these key players for what seems to be legal tackles.
Well, first of all, it wasn't a legal tackle, and it was a tackle that was actually meant to prevent
Right.
It was meant to prevent what could happen to the tackler, because everybody's taught in football, hit what you can see. You look at the replay of that. It's not head-to-head contact that's just a targeting penalty. That's meant to protect the tackler, who in that case was James Skalski, the Clemson linebacker, and his head is down. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And that's a play that they're trying to take out of the game. And if you look at what happened to Justin Fields after, that probably forced the official's hand to make that call in that spot. But I agree that the rule needs to be changed. At this point, to still be under the impression that all targeting fouls are the same is just ludicrous. There's a reason that we changed, the face mask rule, and why there was a 5-yard variation of it and a 15-yard variation of it in the NFL. And I think we need to get to that place in college, because some of these are malicious, and some of these deserve to have a player get ejected. And I thought the Cincinnati play was ridiculously dumb by the offensive lineman who got ejected for targeting on a play that, the play's over, but that's clearly a dirty play. That's what you're looking to get out of the game. I don't think what James Skalski did was necessarily malicious or dirty. It was a poor form tackle that's meant to prevent the player who is doing the tackle. But at the same time, it should have just been 15 yards. Let the kid play in the game and don't eject him in the biggest game of his career. I thought that was, that it's unfortunate to see that play out on that stage. But the good news is that when there is a reaction like this, that's what leads to change more times than not. And I think we're going to eventually have enough momentum for this change to be made, hopefully this offseason.
Arguably, two of the bigger bowl games that we've seen over the weekend was Georgia-Cincinnati and Texas A&M North Carolina, two fantastic games. Just want to curious from your point of view, who impressed you the most? Was it Cincinnati for the way they fought all the way up till the very end, or Texas A&M really pulling away late and almost cementing their status heading into 2021?
Texas A&M, man, I was dead wrong about this team after the Alabama game. I ripped them. I said, you know what, we can't give Jimbo Fisher all these excuses anymore. It's year 3. You get $75 million guaranteed. It's put up or shut up time. You better get going. And that's what they did. My goodness gracious. To win 8 in a row like that, and they won 7 straight or something like that by double digits, and just did what they have always done. And that is, it's their identity. They're a team that beats you at the line of scrimmage with that offensive line, the Maroon Goons. They don't make mistakes. They convert third downs in their sleep. They play really, really good defense, especially on the defensive line and in that front 7. And they find a way to win. They don't make that costly mistake that allows you to get back into a game. And College Game Day was saying that, this is a team that only plays in close games. That's just not true. I mean, they've won all these games by double digits dating back to since they had the walk-off winner against Florida. Every single win that they've had after that has been by double digits. So I think what A&M has done is super, super impressive. They return, I think, of the 11 players who caught a pass for that team this year, they're set to return 10 of them. And that doesn't even include some of the guys who weren't even in there this year, like Cameron Buckley, Baylor Cupp, the former number 1 overall tight end. They return a ton of talent. The foundation is really, really good in College Station. That's top 7 classes that they've had in each of the last 3 years. I was super, super impressed with the Aggies, who went on that 21-0 run to end that game and cement their status as, in my opinion, one of the best 4 teams in college football. I thought they were coming into that game, and it certainly appeared so after what they did to a really good North Carolina team.
Last thing before we let you go, I want to get your thoughts on this. Steve Sarkisian been named the new Texas head coach. Passed up on the Auburn job, reportedly, different things like that. What do you make of him getting the Texas Longhorn job?
Man, it just goes to show you, we think we have these coaching hires figured out. And Arkansas is a great example of this with Sam Pittman, when everybody's criticizing that move, and a year later, it looks like one of the best moves made at the offseason. We think we have everything figured out with Tom Herman. What if we had gone back in time and said, 2017 version of all of us, in 4 years, Tom Herman's going to be replaced by Steve Sarkisian? Nobody in their right mind would have believed that. But Steve Sarkisian is going to go down as probably the best coordinator in Alabama history. I mean, the guy led the 2 best offenses in school history in his only 2 years in Tuscaloosa. They finally had that streak of 35-point games come to an end in the semifinal against Notre Dame. But just an unbelievable job that Steve Sarkisian has done rebuilding his image. And in a place like Texas where they're desperate. I mean, they search for everything offensively. I don't know why they hired Tim back a few years ago to try and run that offense. That didn't work. Nothing Tom Herman really did was sustaining success. You could see that down to the wire where Sam Ehlinger's 4th passes all the time. It looks like everything's always breaking down. Yeah, I mean, surprising that the timing of it happened, but when you kind of go out after a guy like Urban Meyer and then you're not able to hit out on that move, they were really in a tough spot to try and sell Tom Herman to everyone moving forward. So I thought the move was great. Good for Steve Sarkisian for getting that opportunity. I know he's definitely going to be missed in Tuscaloosa.
Just came up with a great idea for a bowl game next year, Connor. You have it on Dana White's Fight Island, and you invite Tulsa and Mississippi State to relive the worst brawl I have seen since that Miami-Florida International one. There's got to be some fallout from this. I know the season's over for both programs, but something's got to come from that fight. That was something else.
Well, and the good news is if you have it on Fight Island, you can't just kick a player and then run away.
Right.
You got to stay in the octagon. You don't really have anywhere to go. So, yeah, I mean, if they're going to do it that way, I guess may as well just let them duke it out in the octagon and not necessarily have an entire field worth, to work with, where Mike Leach can lose track of people while he's taking pictures with fans and pretending like nothing's going on.
That was amazing. It really was. And the reaction from Leach, too. It's just like, well, I would say to not do that again. Just head
I don't know how that happens, man. That's a black eye for that program. They need to get things figured out. I'm set to talk about all these great things about Mississippi State, and then I'm moving forward, and then I ask myself, wait a minute, is this team disciplined at all? Because, yikes, that was incredibly bad in the league. I agree. It does need to step in and make something known that just can't be accepted.
Team's a reflection of their coaches sometimes. All right, Connor, appreciate you, man. Happy New Year. Thanks as always. Talk next week.
Thanks, Connor.
Sounds good. Appreciate it, guys.
It's Connor O'Gara from Saturday Down South. Yeah, did you see any of that brawl from the Armed Forces Bowl?
Crazy. Absolutely. And I'd seen the notification pop up with the brawl and everything, but going back and watching it, you saw the Mississippi State kid drop kick the dude. Mm-hmm. Looked like at one point there was a Tulsa player laying on the ground, and just guys were just waylaying on top of him, and one guy just was barely walking off the field. It was brutal. And you're right. Something needs to be done with that. I don't know what can you do, because all these guys may opt out and just move on.
Well, I mean, that's the kind of fight that the police get called to out of the streets.
And they were out there
in the middle of a football field. I don't know. Just charges get drawn from something like that. All right, we'll come back, wrap up the first hour of halftime. Get with us at 877-377-6963.